Well, hey everybody, today is June 5th, 2017, and in this live stream, I'm going to be talking about what my favorite things in Switzerland were. I'm back from Switzerland. We just spent a week there, and it was really great. And so I wanted to share with you my top 10 things that I enjoyed about Switzerland, and I've got about 5 or 6 or 7 annoyances too. If you missed this live stream and you're watching the archive and you want to check out the next live stream, it will be 1 week from today. So if I can do my math in public, that should be June 12th, 2017, 8 p.m. Los Angeles time. And on YouTube, Clement just joined from Singapore. Greetings from Southern California. Hey, Clement, hope the weather's good in Singapore. Switzerland. Before I get into my top 10 things, I just wanted to show you a visual aid of where we went, and I also wanted to say hi to Brandon Torres on YouTube. Hi, Brandon. And also say thank you to everybody who gave suggestions on my video about where we should go, where we should eat. Some of those are really good suggestions, and I couldn't have enjoyed Switzerland as much without all of your suggestions. Hansel Ying on YouTube, on Facebook says, hi, how are you? And I am excellent, Hansel. How are you? All right, so this is a map of Switzerland right here. Hopefully you can see it, and there's not too much reflection. And I'm going to make it a little smaller so that I can easily point to things and try not to get too much glare from the lamp. I'm doing this in a hotel room, and so I prayed to the Wi-Fi gods. Hopefully they're good. Hopefully you can hear me, and this sticks. So we flew into Zurich. We did Swiss business class. I'll have a video on Swiss business class. We spent 3 nights in Zurich, so you'll see an upcoming video on Zurich. We then took a day trip to Bern, which is the capital of Switzerland. And from Bern, we also took a half-day trip out to this town called Morat, which is this old medieval town. We walked the city walls. That was pretty fun. Then to spend the night, we stayed in another hotel out here in the Berner Oberland. There's a town in here that's too small for you to see, but it's called Wingen, right there. I'll talk about that in this video. We really enjoyed the Swiss Alps. We spent 2 nights at a kind of Swiss family-run hotel there. Snow. If you watched my live stream from last week while I was in Switzerland, that's where that was from, on the mountains there. And then we spent our final 2 nights in Lucerne by Lake Lucerne up here. So that's basically the agenda. And so you'll see videos of all those places coming out and the hotel reviews too, Brandon. So excellent. I have a couple other videos coming up from Los Angeles before I get to Switzerland, so stay on the lookout for those. All right, so now with that, now you know where I went. So I'll get into the top 10 favorite things from Switzerland. Number 1, and I talked about it with Wingen in the mountains and where I did my previous live stream, number 1 is the Swiss Alps. About 80% of Switzerland is mountains. The Swiss Alps are truly amazing. About the closest I've ever gotten to the Swiss Alps before was at Disneyland at the Matterhorn, that cool ride that's themed after a mountain in Switzerland. But we really enjoyed the Schilthorn, which is this mountain that has this restaurant called the Piz Gloria, and it was featured in a James Bond movie called Her Majesty's Secret Service. This peak, to get up there, you take a series of cable cars, but it's truly an amazing place to be at the end of May when we were there, and there was still snow. And it was neat to go in this rotating restaurant where you actually sit in the restaurant and over the course of an hour it makes a full 360-degree revolution. So that was just very cool. There was also another mountain in the Swiss Alps that we visited called the Jungfrau. The Jungfrau is called the top of Europe because it is the highest train station in Europe. I think the elevation was about 11,000 feet. To convert that to meters, my math is not that good in public, and by that I mean not that good on a live stream, but it's a very tall mountain. To get up to the Schilthorn, you take like a cable car. To get up to the Jungfrau, you take a cogwheel railway, and it's actually the It's not the steepest cogwheel railway, because we did that at the next mountain we went to, but I will say there's probably the railroad to get up there is probably one of the most expensive. So there were a couple questions Hansel and Clement asked about how much do you need to pay. And so to get up to the Jungfrau, the round trip is, it was about, I think, 150 Swiss francs if you pay full price. I mean, it's a pretty expensive ticket to get up there. The Schilthorn was about half the price, 80 Swiss francs. We purchased Swiss travel passes, which are basically the passes you can get in 3, 4, 8, 14-day increments. And it includes unlimited travel on Swiss trains, with the exception of the mountain railways, which you only get either a 50% or 25% discount. And so we got the discounted tickets to get up there. The Schilthorn, that made it 40 Swiss francs, and the Jungfrau was maybe 100 francs or something like that. But it was truly worth it, and I would totally do it again because it's just a really amazing place to go. There was another question here on YouTube. Was it hard to breathe at 11,000 foot elevation? I wouldn't really have called it hard to breathe, but it was more tiring to walk around, like to walk around staircases and to rush someplace. They had signs that would tell you the elevation's really high, so be careful and don't rush too much. We tried to take it easy, but I definitely could tell that the air was more thin. Something that was funny for sale in the gift shop up there on top of the Jungfrau were these aerosol canisters of fresh air from Switzerland, which it was in English and in Chinese, and I assume it caters to a lot of the Chinese tourists who don't have fresh air where they come from. So the next part that we really enjoyed about the Swiss Alps, also this town we stayed in called Wingen, is it was a car-free town. So Wingen, it was about 4,000 feet elevation, and Hansel Ying asked, which hotel did we stay in? We stayed in this hotel in Wingen called the Hotel Beausite Park, Beausite, Beausite Park. And in Wingen, they don't allow you and I or regular people to drive cars in. They do have some service vehicles, but it makes the town very quiet because you're up in the mountains, there's no cars, there's no traffic, and the only thing you hear really going by is the trains, and you hear the bells of the cows. So we'll talk more about the cows in a little bit. There was another mountain town on the other side of this ravine called Muren, which was also a car-free town, and that was really neat too. We visited, Rick Steves' recommendation was also to visit this little town called Gimmelwald, which is a Swiss alpine town, population about 100. And in this little mountain town, they have these like honesty shops where they don't have any attendants. You just find a little box and put the money in to buy something and take it. So the one honesty shop was selling souvenirs. There were also like honest cheese shops where you could just walk by and pick up cheese. There's kind of this really clean mountain living. So Tian Li asks, which is the great food in Switzerland? And so that is probably a part where I'll get to later in my annoyances section. I think the food in Switzerland isn't maybe the most delicious food of anywhere. Like, for example, if you go to Italy, food in Italy is truly delicious. The food in Switzerland, they're very famous for fondue. They also had a lot of sausages and a lot of schnitzel, a lot of veal. I think one of the best things I had was this, it was like, thinly sliced veal with thinly sliced veal with a mushroom sauce and these things they call roasty potatoes, which are kind of like a hash brown. We had a lot of sausages that were pretty good, a lot of schnitzel, and we had some fondue as well. And I wouldn't say that was on our favorite list because I feel like fondue is one of those things that, it's bread and it's cheese, and after a while, like, it's good, the first bite, the second bite's kind of good, the fourth bite gets really tiring, the 50th bite of fondue gets even more tiring. And I really think the Mexicans have a better version of fondue, which is called nachos, which is chips and spicy cheese, so it keeps your attention. The other really neat thing about the Swiss Alps, and I kind of mentioned this, was just snow all year round. Again, really amazing to be someplace in May or June with snow. Okay, I'm going to pause before I go on to number 2 and take a drink. Everybody likes to know what I'm drinking any given day. Today I am drinking San Pellegrino sparkling water. Since I'm in a Marriott that has a concierge lounge, that's where I picked this up from. Okay, number 2 favorite thing from Switzerland is the trains. I think Switzerland has the best trains in all of Europe. One, it was really neat as a part of this to buy the Swiss Travel Pass, as they call it, which includes unlimited train transportation. You don't have to buy tickets for almost any route of the trains. The only routes we had to buy the tickets for were the mountain trains, but every other train we just took these passes that we ordered online, we printed them out, and occasionally some people on the trains would come and ask to see them, but most of the time the trains run on kind of the honesty system. The trains were all very clean. The trains were absolutely comfortable. Clement asked, definitely they were comfortable. They have second class and first class. The first class looks extra comfortable. We did not spring the extra money for the first class tickets, and we were sitting in second class. Probably the most scenic train ride that wasn't a mountain train that we took was the train from Interlaken to Lucerne, and this is one of Switzerland's panoramic trains, and the panoramic train has these really big, tall windows, which was nice. So they've specially designed it for sightseeing. The bathrooms on the train were all pretty clean. They had food on the train, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but the trains were always on time. And living in Southern California where I do, they've got this thing called Amtrak, but Amtrak is almost completely worthless because it's almost never on time. And if any of you have been to France and have ridden the trains there, you will know that the trains in France are often not on time, which, of course, the funny thing I think about trains in France is that the French word for a delay is retard. So that's just a kind of a funny thing to see on a sign. Slightly childish humor. Clement says I should do a train review. I probably should have thought about that before. I didn't get a whole lot of video on the train, but I will be doing a review of the Swiss Airlines business class, so I've got that down. Clement also asked if I got anything from the mountains. So probably the only thing we bought in the mountains was Swiss chocolate. When we were at the Jungfrau, they had a Lindt store. So Lindt chocolates right here are, so you can see this on both. Lindt chocolates, this is a brand from Switzerland. And at the Jungfrau, they had the world's tallest elevation chocolate store, so we did buy some chocolate to enjoy up there. We bought a couple souvenirs. I always pick up magnets from places, and OC Girl got a hat from up there. So those were some of the things we picked up from the mountains. Funny, at the Jungfrau, there was a store that sold Swiss watches. This is a Casio. This is not a Swiss watch. But the store that sold Swiss watches up there, they billed themselves as the watch store of the world's highest elevation watch store. And, of course, Swiss watches, for those of you who don't know, are really expensive. They had watches in this case there for 10,000 francs. And I'm sure there are some people who buy those up there. So... all right, that concludes number 2, which was the best trains in Europe in Switzerland. My third favorite thing about Switzerland were the train stations. This is kind of a parallel to trains, but separate because train stations are different than trains. And the train stations in Switzerland, they're good. The train stations have bathrooms, they have clean bathrooms, they have a lot of restaurants, they have a lot of convenience stores. So if you're, say, in Zurich or in Lucerne or Bern, and you're picking up a train and you're going to be on it for a couple hours, well, you can pick up some food. The other great thing about the train stations is the stores there are typically open later than in most of Switzerland. Switzerland is one of those places that has a lot of laws related to when stores close. So, for example, on Sunday, almost every store is closed. Supermarkets typically close at 6 or 7, but the ones in the train stations in almost every city are open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Clement asked, is the train station clean? And yes, I found the train stations, all of them, to be very clean. Seemed very safe, nice places to wait. Hansel Ying asked, how much is the chocolate? Chocolate in Switzerland is expensive. I mean, it's delicious, but it's expensive. So to give you an idea on price, these Lindt truffles at the top of the Jungfrau, they sold them per kilogram, and 1 kilogram of Swiss chocolates was 45 Swiss francs. 45 Swiss francs is about the equivalent of 50 US dollars. So I'll let you do the math to your currency, but not cheap, but delicious. Okay, so my fourth favorite thing about Switzerland was lots of cable cars. So I talked about the mountains, and the great thing about going up to a lot of mountains is there were lots of scenic cable cars, sometimes people call them ropeways, to take you up there. Distinct from the San Francisco cable car, which is one that pulls it along on the bottom, these are cable cars that pull on the top. And Clement asks, was the cable car ride long or short? And I think the answer I would give is yes to both. To go up to the Schilthorn, if you are just taking cable cars, it's 3 different cable cars to get up there. And each of the rides is about maybe 5 minutes. And these are very large cable cars. They hold like 100 people at a time to pack into this cable car. And sometimes there's one cable car that goes up and one cable car that goes down. Some of the routes there was just one car that went up and back. When we went up to Mount Pilatus, which is the mountain above Lucerne, it had the big single cable car that held 100 people, and then it had more of the scenic ones that you typically see at a ski resort that like fit 4 people instead of 100. And on Mount Pilatus, to get down from the mountain, which we took, you go on one of these 4-person cable cars for about 25 or 30 minutes, and so it is a pretty long cable car ride. The nice thing about Mount Pilatus in Lucerne is all those cable cars are included in the Swiss Travel Pass, so if you're purchasing that to do the trains, then the cable cars are completely free, which is pretty neat. Cable cars are a great way to see the scenery. Okay. Hansel Ying said, if I am not wrong, Switzerland has a double-decker cable car. You know, and Hansel, it might. We just didn't see it in our travel. So if you find out what it is, let me know. But that was one I haven't seen, but I would love to see it if I go back to Switzerland again, because that just sounds really cool. Something else that didn't quite make it into my top 10, but I'm going to mention it here related to cable cars, because I was talking about Mount Pilatus in Lucerne. When we were in Lucerne, we did this thing called... oh gosh, I don't even remember the name of it because it was like a German name, but it was a summer toboggan ride. It was like this 1.5 kilometer metal curved path that you paid 8 Swiss francs and sat in this little wheeled sled and rode down it, and it was a lot of fun. It is Switzerland's longest summer toboggan ride, and you know, sometimes they call it a luge. The signs there said toboggan, but OC Girl did mention luge, because if for those of you who are from Singapore, it is very similar to the Sentosa luge. And so that was a lot of fun. And if you're going to Lucerne, I definitely recommend you check it out in the summer. Okay, number 5, favorite thing about Switzerland is free and delicious water. Okay, this is not Swiss water, but in Switzerland, the water that comes out of the tap or the faucet in any hotel room was cold and tasty. And I know that a lot of places like California, the water is perfectly drinkable, but it is not delicious. Water in California is like super chlorinated and doesn't taste good, but the water in Switzerland tastes really good. And again, in the summer when it was hot outside, you turn on that cold water tap and it runs really cold because I think the water just comes down from the mountains. The other neat thing about water is almost every city or town in Switzerland has these public fountains. And some of you may have seen my video on drinking fountains in Rome, and these are similar to that in that they're fountains that basically just run, and they're there not for decoration, well, a little bit for decoration, but also so that if you have a water bottle, you can just hold it under the fountain and fill up your water bottle. The nice thing about this, again, all that water that runs out there is cold, tastes like it's refrigerated, tastes good, and bottled water, if you buy it in Switzerland, is like really expensive at most places. If you buy it at a convenience store, a bottle of water like this will cost you probably 3 Swiss francs. But because these fountains are all over the city, Switzerland has 1,200 public fountains. And again, not the drinking fountains that you're typically thinking about, that like you push a button and the water comes out, but the water just runs constantly, these things, because I think they have way too much water in Switzerland. And so every time you fill that up, you're saving yourself 3 francs. We would often do that before we'd go to a cafeteria or before we'd go to a restaurant. A lot of restaurants would charge for water, but if we fill up our bottle at a fountain, we saved out a whole lot of money on buying bottled water, you know, especially because like this fancy hotel that I'm in right here sells these bottles of water for $3.50. And hey, why do that when the water from the tap in Switzerland is free and delicious? Okay. My number 6 favorite thing about Switzerland was the pastries. Boy, I could use a visual aid for this. What? No, I can't because my chair can't roll over there. So, okay, no visual aid. And so Switzerland had a lot of bakeries, and the bakeries had pretty good pastries. When we were there, I think strawberries and raspberries were in season, so these really delicious strawberry pastries. There was this one bakery that we went to in Lucerne called Heini, Heini, and they had this one pastry, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like the most alcoholic pastry that I think I've ever had in my life. There was quite a bit of alcohol in this pastry. They had really good macarons, and of course, really good chocolates. This is the section where I'm going to talk about chocolates too. The chocolates in Switzerland are truly delicious. And again, they are not cheap, but you know, so I've got this Lindt chocolate right here, and although Lindt is the most well-known Swiss brand, there's a whole bunch of other unique Swiss brands. One is called like Sprungli, La de Ruche maybe. So my German's not really that good, but if you go to Switzerland, make sure to check out some of these gourmet chocolate stores. A lot of them will make the chocolates right in the store, and then they sell them also by weight. And they often sell them like they look like chocolate bark or something, where it'll be like a flat sheet of chocolate, and you can just tell them how much weight you want. 50 grams, 100 grams, a kilogram if you're a really high roller. So we really enjoyed the pastries and the chocolate. Hansel Ying commented on the cable car, and he said the double-decker cable car is at Mount Stanserhorn Cabrillo. All right, I'll have to check that out. Clement asked about, I think, how much the pastries were, and again, they were not cheap, because nothing in Switzerland is cheap. You know, probably a strawberry pastry would be about 5 or 6 francs. I think some of their most well-known pastries are these like raspberry cookies. They're really famous for raspberry cookies. They also have a lot of like German type pretzels. They had a lot of croissants, particularly like these croissants that were filled with Nutella. And the final sort of pastry thing they're famous for is a thing called a Berliner. And a Berliner, and OC Girl helped remind me of that, a Berliner is basically like a round donut that has a filling. So sometimes it had like a chocolate filling, sometimes it had a custard filling, and there's a long history of why a Berliner is called Berliner. Some places they're called pancakes, but again, they're round and they look a little larger than the size of a golf ball type donut. That's, you know, if you look at a lot of things, they often say that's the most famous pastry in Switzerland. Okay, my 7th favorite thing about Switzerland is the bathrooms. They are clean and mostly free. One of the things traveling through Europe is bathrooms often are not free and often are not clean. But in Zurich, the public bathrooms were pretty immaculate. And Clement asked, was the bathroom comfortable? I mean, that's an interesting question because, like, that leads me to think, were they, like, covered in leather or padded. You know, I mean, they weren't as nice as the ones in Japan, because bathrooms in Japan often have the Toto toilets that have the washlets. But almost every cable car station and every train station that we went to had bathrooms. We were never at a loss trying to look for a bathroom, and we never got into a bathroom that we were like, oh my God, this bathroom is so awful, we can't use it. But there have been a lot of other countries I've been to, particularly in Europe, and particularly mainland China. I'm talking about you, where you might go into some bathrooms and you're just like, oh my God, I have to leave and find a different bathroom. What was funny, I think Switzerland is starting to get a lot more Chinese tourists. And so in a lot of the bathrooms, they actually had pictures, these little signs with pictorials to tell you how to use the toilet, like that you sit on it and you don't stand on it. And so they had like a sitting on it with a check mark, and then they had a picture of someone like standing on the seat with a no. And they also had to tell people that if you have like toilet paper, that you flush it in the toilet and you don't throw it in the trash can, because that's often something that a lot of Chinese tourists do. From Facebook, TP Productions says hi, and TP Productions want a shout out. So TP Productions, the shout out's going to you. All right. Clement asked, was the bathroom cold or hot? Hot. And I guess the reason why I'd say hot, we were there in summer and everything was hot. So, by the way, if you're thinking of Switzerland as a really cold place, and I know a lot of you, again, saw me with this video that I was in snow, and I said there's snow everywhere, Zurich actually gets quite warm. It can be like 25 or 30 degrees Celsius. I'm American, so we do the Fahrenheit scale. It was like 80 or 85 Fahrenheit in Zurich. It was really hot. Like a t-shirt and shorts was not cool enough to be. And on Facebook, SoCal Seth, hola amigo, thanks for joining. Okay. Number 8 favorite thing about Switzerland, the Swiss travel pass. I talked about this a little bit at the beginning in the rail section, but the Swiss travel pass was great. This is the unlimited travel pass that you can buy. It was nice because I just went online, picked a number of people, dates that it was valid for, entered my passport information, and printed it out, and then took the piece of paper printout with me. As compared to Japan, when you buy the Japan Rail Pass, you have to either get it in the mail or you get an exchange voucher that you go exchange it for. Like, it's this more kind of cumbersome process, whereas the Swiss Travel Pass, has this like QR code on it, and so the train staff could just take their Android phone and zap it. Though I'd say most of the train staff just looked at my printout and decided it was good and actually didn't really check it. A couple comments on Facebook. SoCal Seth talked about 85 degrees, saying that I think that's probably not very hot because he says it's over 100 in Arizona. And SoCal Seth, I believe it is 100 in Arizona, but Arizona's a dry heat. That's what they always say. And Switzerland was actually quite humid. It was a humid heat. I mean, not nearly as humid as Asia, but there's a lot of rivers and lakes, and so there was quite a bit of humidity. TP Productions on Facebook says, you are the best. Thank you, TP Productions. Let's see if I can... I don't know how to give these things likes on here, but I'll give you a pound. Pound. All right. And on YouTube, Clement asked, was the Swiss Travel Pass expensive? I mean, I guess it depends what you consider to be expensive. Our 8-day Swiss Travel Pass cost about 400 Swiss francs, but I think for the amount of train transportation that we did, 8 days unlimited transportation was really good. It includes more than just transportation. It also includes admission to like 500 different museums. And so like in Lucerne, we went into the Glacier Garden, which normally has an admission of 15 francs, but that was free because we had the Swiss Travel Pass. There were a lot of those types of attractions that we went into to be like, oh, it's free because we have the Travel Pass, so we might as well go in. And again, nice to not have to buy tickets. Jake McShane on YouTube asks, were the Swiss people friendly? And I think I'm going to answer that with a yes, with a caveated yes. Like, I don't think the Swiss are as friendly as I don't know, people maybe in middle America, you go into a small town and people are super friendly and they'll chat you up and ask how you're doing, make small talk and ask you about your day. But the Swiss people, they were efficient and courteous. All of the shopkeepers were pleasant. You know, there was none of this like shopkeeper that you walk in and they're like on their phone and not paying attention to you, or you know, like in France, you go to a restaurant and you barely seem like you're a customer to them. On that note, I think they're pretty friendly. The small hotel that we stayed at in Wingen, that was like this family-owned hotel. The lady who owned it was there. Her son was there. The people at the restaurant always greeted us every morning. They were very nice. So I would say the Swiss people were very pleasant. On Facebook, SoCal Seth comments on the heat a little more, and he says in Phoenix it's a dry heat, but so is an oven. And you're right, that's true. And he doesn't have to shovel snow in Phoenix, so I agree. TP Productions says it's 9:30 in Regina and asks when I'm going to Hawaii next. I am not sure when I'm going to Hawaii next. A lot of my travel plans don't get planned until pretty close in. So, and actually a lot of people ask me where is my next destination now that we've come back from Switzerland. Right now that is TBD. We haven't planned our next exciting vacation destination yet. So, but I'll certainly keep you all up to date. I will probably do a video and ask you for your suggestions when we plan to go to our next destination. On YouTube, Joshua Pickles, who I'm going to give a pound to, asks, how was the coffee? That's a good question because, one, coffee's super expensive in Switzerland. Like a Starbucks coffee in Zurich, like a regular coffee was 5 francs. And if you want like a cappuccino or something like that, it was 7 francs. I don't know. I don't think the coffee was super delicious. Like in comparison to the coffee in Italy. Like I think the coffee in Italy is pretty delicious. And I'm not a huge coffee drinker, but when I'm in Rome, I will drink 4 or 5 cappuccinos a day. In Switzerland, I felt it was a little bit bitter, but the neat, interesting thing about Switzerland's the home of Nespresso. The Nespresso, the little capsules that you make in these instant machines. And the Nespresso capsules are like super cheap in Switzerland. They're like the equivalent of 10 cents, which is way cheaper than they are here. And so it's kind of funny that in a country that's really expensive, the Nespresso coffee was pretty cheap. Clement comments and says, I heard the shops closed quite early. And in fact, they do close quite early. On weekdays, in every city, the shops typically close by 6 or 7 p.m., mandated by law that they close that early. Most cities will have like a one night that the stores can be open till 9, but otherwise they close at 6 and 7. On Sundays, all stores will be closed only in the train stations. And it's kind of a quality of life thing. Joshua Pickles asks on YouTube, any noticeable differences between the German, French, and Italian parts of Switzerland? That's a good question, and I think we didn't make it out to the Italian parts of Switzerland. We were in the German and French parts, and I didn't really notice a big difference in, I'll say, the places themselves. On the trains, they will often announce things in all 3 languages. On the side of the Swiss railways, it says like SBB, FFS, something, 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 and it's the acronyms for the train in all 3 of the major languages, French, German, and Italian. You know, when we were in Wingen, it was clear that our waitress was a French speaker, because every time she would bring us our meal, she would put it down and go, and voila, merci beaucoup. And so it is interesting that they kind of just exchange the languages and you absolutely hear all of them. Switzerland is kind of one of those places. Okay, there were a couple questions on Facebook. SoCal Seth commented and said, maybe it's just me, but I think Europe in general is so expensive. Europe in general is expensive, but Switzerland is the most expensive. I have not been to a more expensive place than Switzerland when it comes to food and hotels in Europe. TV Productions asked if I have any pets. I mean, other than Topher, my traveling panda, but I consider him my brother, and some very stuffed animals. We don't have any live pets. TB Productions asks, how long were you in Switzerland? We were in Switzerland for 1 week, 7 nights in Switzerland, which all the Swiss people, when I told them that, they said, it's much too short. You need to stay for longer. And to that I said, well, maybe I'll come back. And it actually became 7 nights because that's where the length of time we were able to get the Swiss business class travel on award miles. Joshua Pickles commented and said Monaco is more expensive than Switzerland. And okay, you got me there. You're right. Monaco is more expensive than Switzerland. Monaco is truly an amazing place too. And I don't know if I gave a greetings to Pierre Antoine Louise Bordeaux, but Pierre, greetings. TP Productions also asked, how much language do I know? I know English, and 我会说一点中文, which is I speak a little bit of Chinese. I also hablo a little bit of Espanol, but not with a Spanish accent, with kind of a Southern Californian gringo accent. But you just sort of pick that up living in Southern California. Joshua Pickles commented that mooring a yacht in Monaco is a bitch, and I bet really expensive too, because that's the place of mega yachts. I'm impressed at the yachts there. Okay, we'll go on to number 9. My 9th favorite thing. I don't know how to put this in both videos. My 9th favorite thing about Switzerland is hiking. The hiking paths in Switzerland were all very well signed. They were well groomed, and what was also really nice about the hiking paths is on these mountains, you don't have to hike up, you can just hike down, because there's so many cable cars and there's so many trains that go up the mountains. You can take the cable car up and then you can hike down. There were a lot of groups that were walking around with their walking sticks, and hiking is definitely a Swiss pastime. And speaking of the yellow signs, the neat thing about it was the yellow signs wouldn't just say something like the name of the path, but they would actually say, if you go on this path, this is how long in minutes it will take to get to this town or this destination. And they might have 10 of them and say it's 15 minutes to here, 2 hours to here, 6 hours to here, 2 days to here if you're walking this. And so that was pretty neat. Clement asked, was the hiking hard to climb? And I will say we didn't go on any serious hiking paths. I mean, they have them there. They have like ice climbing. You can climb up the sides of these mountains with ice picks. We didn't do that. We did much more the leisurely hikes, which are kind of more our cup of tea. Okay. And we are to number 10, my 10th favorite thing about Switzerland, and then, well, we're not completely done, because then I'm going to get into some of my annoyances before we conclude. But my 10th favorite thing about Switzerland were the cows. The cows and their cowbells. And for those of you who follow me on Facebook, you'll see this morning I posted a picture of me, a selfie with 3 cows. And if you look at those cows on Facebook, they all have these big bells around their neck. And they kind of, like a herd of cows in Switzerland, starts to sound like almost like wind chimes, like manual wind chimes. And these cows, these bells are like, they're like decorative, and the cows were all pretty good looking, I have to say. As a coworker of mine said, the cows were handsome. I mean, not all the cows were handsome. Some of them were skinny. But the most amazing thing about the cows, too, was that the farmers in Switzerland take their cows to different elevations. So, like, in the winter, they'll keep the cows down in the valley, and in the summer, they take their cows up the hill, and they eat the different grass that's up there. And the slopes from the mountains are pretty steep, and these cows will be on these really steep slopes. And it's kind of neat to think about these cows, and the place that you get your milk or your cheese from is these cows that are on these steep slopes instead of cows that are in some like smelly, poopy barn someplace. Clement asked if we drank the milk, and absolutely we drank quite a bit of milk. We ate quite a bit of cheese, and of course we ate quite a bit of chocolate. I had, from one of the chocolate stores, I had some chocolate milk. It was the most expensive chocolate milk I've ever had. It was 6 francs for a small bottle of chocolate milk, but it was also the chocolate milk I had with the most bourbon in it ever. It was chocolate milk with bourbon, which was quite interesting. Comment on Facebook, SoCal Seth Said the cows are pretty awesome. He'll give me that. And asked if I tried on a Rolex. You know, I did not try on a Rolex. We didn't actually try on any Swiss watches because I don't have the money quite to roll that much. TP Productions asked if I've been to Mexico, and yes, I have been to Mexico. If you look at my videos, if you look like way back in the time machine, I've done one video on Cabo San Lucas. We've also been to Ensenada and Tijuana, just kind of south of San Diego. Jake McShane asks, did you eat any beef or just admire the alive cows? We did eat some beef. Some of the sausages we had were beef. Also at the Schilthorn, I had a 007 burger, which was the James Bond themed burger that had 007 emblazoned on the bun. It's the worst burger I've ever had in my life, so I don't know that I'll go back to have that burger again. I think they really enjoy their cows more for the cheese and the milk and the dairy, things like that, and the yogurt. Protokazi Live says, greetings from St. Louis. Protokazi Live, greetings, and thanks for joining us. All right, so those are my 10 favorite things. Now I've got annoyances, things that were kind of annoying about Switzerland. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 annoying things about Switzerland. This will go quicker than my favorite things. Clement says that the water that I buy looks like I'm drinking beer. And, you know, the thing is, because I'm cheap, I didn't buy it. I got it from the concierge lounge here at the Marriott. Usually Pellegrino is actually kind of expensive. Sometimes I like bubbly water. The other thing that was really interesting about a lot of the water and a lot of the bottled water in Switzerland was mineral water, and like a bottle of some of the Switzerland water can have like 20% of your day's calcium. This bottle of Pellegrino, by the way, has 4% of your day's calcium, in case you're wondering. Comment on Facebook. SoCal Seth says most places will let you try them on. You'll get to the point where you can afford one. Well, thanks, SoCal Seth. I hope so. Maybe that'll be when I reach 1 million subscribers or something. Hey. Okay. Okay. Annoyances. So we talked about this a little bit, but my first annoyance about Switzerland was that everything closes so early. Like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, there is nothing left to do because everything is closed. And the tangential number 2 related to that is everything is closed on a Sunday. And when I say everything is closed, I mean like everything is closed on a Sunday. Even like pharmacies are closed, supermarkets are closed. I mean, normal things that you would think in any country would be open are closed in Switzerland. Switzerland actually has a lot of laws about what you can and can't do on a Sunday. I've got a video coming up that's like 30 interesting facts about Switzerland, and that's one that I include in there. Things like it is illegal to mow the lawn on a Sunday because they want to keep the peace. So Sundays are still Sundays in Switzerland, but that means you really have to plan for it and buy everything that you'd want to eat, drink, consume on a Saturday because it won't be open on a Sunday. My third annoyance, and this is kind of related to this of everything closing early, is there's really nothing to do at night. Switzerland is really, you kind of need to rise early and be outside, and don't expect a lot of nightlife. There's not like a great shopping mall you can go to. About the only things that are open at night are the restaurants. They don't really have a lot of bars. They have more cafes, and it seemed like everybody that was outside at night was at one of these maybe outdoor eateries drinking a beer because it was warm weather. There were also a lot of people outside along, say like the rivers and the lakes, drinking beer, not water, because it's legal to drink beer on the sidewalk and things like that in Switzerland. Okay, my other kind of annoyance about Switzerland is everything is super expensive, but particularly the food. I talked about the price of coffee being expensive. Like in McDonald's, a Big Mac meal was 13 Swiss francs, and 13 Swiss francs is about 15 US dollars. So that's pretty expensive for a Big Mac. You know, when we were getting a cheap lunch or dinner of like a kebab, like a doner kebab would be $6 here in the States, and in Zurich or Lucerne, where we got a doner kebab, it was 13 Swiss francs, so about $15. So about 3 times the price of a typical doner kebab here in the States. And drinks were super expensive. You could consider this good or bad. Beer was about the same price as water. So if you're a beer drinker, you don't have to worry and don't feel guilted into drinking water because the beer's the same price, almost cheaper sometimes. Clement says, just asking countries which you often visit. What countries do I often visit? I visit probably Japan the most. I also like to visit Singapore quite a bit, and just kind of various countries through Europe too. Probably Japan, Singapore, Taiwan also. I can't forget about Taiwan. I visit there pretty frequently too. Jake McShane asks, of the cities in Switzerland you visited, which one was your favorite? So I think our favorite in Switzerland was Wingen. And I say Wingen because the Swiss Alps were just the coolest place to be. Like a quiet, relaxing, amazing mountain scenery. Like we look out of our hotel room and there's this like amazing snowy mountain. I mean, truly being in Wingen felt like looking out of our room, like looking out onto a postcard. I mean, it almost didn't seem real, but it was. The hotel in Wingen was not our favorite because it was, I'd say, I've become spoiled by these like international hotels that have air conditioning was the word I was looking for, air conditioning. The hotel in Wingen had no air conditioning. Just open the door because it doesn't get hot there all that often, but in the daytime when it is hot, there's no air conditioning, then the room is hot, the room is kind of stuffy, and so that was kind of annoying. Clement asks, was there Wi-Fi in the mountain? And on the Schilthorn, there was absolutely Wi-Fi at the top of the mountain, which is really amazing. Switzerland is like a modern country. They like technology. They like engineering. And that was actually how I was able to do my live stream up at 10,000 feet elevation because they had free Wi-Fi at the top of the mountain. So that was pretty cool. Okay. Next annoyance is restaurants that charge for water. A lot of restaurants in Switzerland don't give you free water. They want to charge you for water. Well, it's really annoying to charge for water when the water outside at the fountain is free and just as delicious as their water inside. I went to Vapiano's, which is a German-owned Italian chain. Okay, kind of bizarre, but I like Vapiano's, and they had a location in Bern. And, I'm asked for some water, and of course they pull out the bottle of Pellegrino, and they'd be like, oh, we have this. And I'm like, never mind. They're like, what do you mean, never mind? No, I'm good, because I had a bottle of fountain water that I got outside that was free instead of paying 6 francs for their bottle of Pellegrino inside. All right. Second to last annoyance, we're getting to the end here. So second to last annoyance is not enough air conditioning. The temperature of everything, not just the outside temperature, but like the temperature of everything inside, the temperature of the trains, the temperature of the restaurants, the temperature of the hotel rooms, the temperature of the stores for me was all too hot. I know this is kind of a European thing, that Europeans compared to, I'd say, Americans or Asians seem to like their indoor temperatures to be warmer. And it was just, everything was really warm. Like we'd get on a train and we'd be running for the train. And I know I said I love the trains and they had the best trains, but like going to these trains, you'd run and you'd get on it. And like everybody in the train who's not Swiss, who's foreign is like doing this because it's just so hot. Luckily, some of the mountain trains had windows that you could open, and I had opened the windows up to the one that goes up to the Jungfrau, and of course one of the train conductors comes by and goes, close the window. You can't open the window. So I would like a little more air conditioning. Pierre on Facebook says, love your channel, so on point. Regards to Topher. Pierre, thank you very much. Thanks for subscribing. I love that you watch the videos, and I will pass your words on to Topher. He will appreciate it. Owen Howley says, hey, Yellow Productions, I'm going to Maui June 23rd. I can't wait. I've watched all your reviews. That's awesome, Owen. I hope you enjoy Maui, and I'm glad you enjoyed those videos. It was interesting, when I started putting up the Maui travel guide, it actually didn't do that well from a viewership perspective when I put up 2 or 3, but then I put up like 6 or 7. I think they've gotten like critical mass that people find them and they become a useful guide. So that's awesome. Thank you. Clement asks, where is Topher? He is back He is back at home. He didn't make it on this trip. He's pretty tired after traveling from Switzerland and being on camera so much, so he's back at our home bed instead of my hotel room on this trip, relaxing. Clement asks, in the night, was there drunk people? We weren't out like super late, but I will say that when we were in Zurich walking back to our hotel, maybe like 9 o'clock from the main train station, we were staying at the Zurich Marriott, and you had to walk kind of along this path that runs along the river. There were a lot of people sitting on the wall of this river like drinking, because again, you can drink outside and it's fine, and they bought their beer I think from the supermarket and drank it there, and they were starting to get a little drunk. A lot of the things that I read about general safety in Switzerland is that Switzerland is really safe, but the only thing you have to worry about is drunk people, and drunk people at night, because drunk people at night like to pick fights. We didn't particularly encounter any of that, but that was absolutely something that I read other people mention. Okay, and the last annoyance, this is going to be an interesting one. My last annoyance is that the towels at the hot spring we went to were not complimentary, but the towels were for rent. So for those of you who've seen a lot of my videos on Japan, I've got a lot of videos on onsens. Onsens are Japanese hot springs, typically part of a hotel, hot spring baths that you go in and soak in the hot water. In Switzerland, they have hot spring baths as well, and so we went into the Thermal Bad Zurich. Thermal Bad is German for hot spring. And this hot spring you go into, the admission was about 30 Swiss francs. And it didn't include a towel. Like, you either had to bring a towel or rent a towel. And it seems to me like it's almost adding insult to injury to charge people 30 francs and not give them a towel. They also had robes, and you had to rent the robes too. I mean, they're just like, it's like taking blood out of a turnip. Now, the other thing I'll say related to towels that was kind of annoying, at the Marriott and the Renaissance we stayed at were fine. The hotel in Wingen that we stayed at, they were definitely European towels, and by that I mean thin and hard. European towels are often thin and hard and not super absorbent. I like my towels to be big and fluffy and soft, but that's probably just me. Clement asks, was the hot spring quite good or bad on a scale of 1 to 10? And as I'm answering this, I will just mention this is my last annoyance, and so after this, I'm going to conclude. So if you have any other questions that you've been thinking of, ask them now. So I would probably give the hot spring a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. The reason I would give it a 6 in comparison to Japanese hot springs in Zurich, it was still chlorinated. So there was like a smell of chlorine, and it was kind of small compared to some of the bigger ones we've been to in Japan. What was neat, though, was the hot spring was like in the middle of the city. We just took a tram to it. So it wasn't far from a hotel. The other thing that was neat about the hot spring that we went to was it was on like a roof. So it was inside this old warehouse building, and then it was also, they had this like rooftop one where you could like have like this great view over all of Zurich. And then inside, the hot springs inside, they had these they almost seemed like you were sitting in like a big wooden Japanese soaking tub, except one that would fit like 50 people. And so it was kind of neatly themed. Just annoyed no towels. So there's a few questions that were added, so I'll go through and answer these, and then we'll wrap it up. So Jake McShane on YouTube asks, what was the music like in Switzerland? Did they seem to listen to a lot of American-style music? That's a very interesting question, and an observation that I had walking around Switzerland, walking around Zurich, walking around the cities, is you rarely hear music. Like, at the restaurants, there'd be no music playing. At the stores, there's no music playing. I mean, at the stores or department stores or things like that, it was typically American pop music that we heard. But there wasn't, like at the bars, there wasn't like any like live music. You know, in Ireland, you hear Irish music all the time and everywhere. But Switzerland, there really wasn't a lot of music. We did go to this one place in Lucerne that was recommended by somebody whose name I can't remember right now. The Stadkeller, I think. And they do these like Swiss cultural performances. They did yodeling. And so they had like some traditional singing. They had people who played the alpenhorn, which is like the super long instrument. And then they also had this one guy who played a saw, like a saw that you cut a tree with. This guy played it like a violin. And I will totally have some video on that. It was like super bizarre. We also didn't really see any buskers or street performers in most of Switzerland. The only place we saw street performers was in Lucerne, which I think is the most touristy of the cities in Switzerland. Okay, next question. CL on YouTube says, greetings from Toronto. Greetings, CL. Thanks for making all your awesome reviews and videos. CL, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words, and thanks for watching, and thanks for joining in on the live stream. And actually, it's kind words like that that help keep me going. So thank you. Jake McShane said, do you think you'll go back to Switzerland? I would like to think so. You know, before going to Switzerland, we weren't super sure if it would be super exciting or not, particularly because we didn't hear really awesome things about the food, and we are kind of foodies when we travel. But Switzerland was really neat. It was nice. It was clean. We love the Alps, and, you know, we kind of visited the northern central part. We didn't make it down to like Geneva, and we didn't make it down to the Matterhorn, and we didn't make it down to the Italian-speaking part, and so those are parts that we'd like to do next time, maybe connect it with some parts of northern Italy, like Milan. We hope to do that. We enjoyed traveling on Swiss Airlines, so we think we will probably look at that again in the future. Clement asks, which countries would you want to visit again? Wow, that is probably a super long list. But I think probably my top, since we're talking about Europe, I would say my top 3 countries or cities in Europe. Number 1 is Rome. I really like Rome. Number 2, I would say, is Vienna. I really enjoyed Vienna. And number 3 is Prague. I am half Czech, and so I'm a little bit partial to Prague, particularly the dumplings and the meat and the things with sauces. I just love the food there, too. Mark Perez on YouTube says, hello, Chris, from Monterey, California. Hello, Mark. I enjoy Monterey. I enjoy the aquarium there, too. Pretty cool place in Monterey. Thanks for joining in. Clement asks, if I went alone with Topher. I went alone with Topher and OC Girl, OC Girl, my traveling partner, also the voice of Topher when you hear Topher talking. Or should I say Topher's voice coach. Topher has his own voice. I shouldn't say that he's another voice. Mark Perez says, I watched all your Japan videos. Great info. We'll be going to August. Mark, that is awesome. I hope you enjoy Japan. If you have any questions about Japan, definitely hit me up. Let me know. And let me come over to Facebook and read the last comments here. Comic Nutria 1357 says, you've been traveling so much. How can you even set a standard temperature? I'm not sure what you mean by set a standard temperature. But I just, typically when I come into a hotel room, if it's in Fahrenheit, I like it cold. So when we talk about cold things, maybe I'm a cold-blooded animal or something. Emily Bye-bye says, cool. SoCal Seth says, I'll be back out on Oahu in January. SoCal Seth, I hope you enjoy it. Emily Bye-bye says, I should come to Canada. And we would like to visit Canada. We've been talking about potentially visiting Vancouver, because we haven't been to Vancouver. That might be neat. And there's direct flights, I think, that go from LAX to Vancouver. Let's see. Clement asks, will I be visiting other countries after this? I'm sure we will, but we don't have them planned yet, so we don't know where we're going next, but I'm sure we'll be going someplace great. Nikio on Facebook asks, what are your top 3 Asian cities? Number 1, Tokyo. Number 2, Singapore. I know Singapore is a city-state. Number 3, Hong Kong. Number 4, Taipei. And I added Hong Kong before Taipei just because I really like dim sum. And so I really like the dim sum in Hong Kong. But I really like Taipei because the people in Taipei are a lot friendlier than I find them in Hong Kong. SoCal says you'll enjoy Vancouver. I hope so. So thanks for letting me know. That'll maybe bump it up on the priority list. Brandon Torres says Canada will be awesome. So maybe that'll be our next destination. Never know. Also depends where the flights are cheap because that's often what takes us there. All right. Well, with that, I will be going on 59 minutes for this live stream, so I think I should cut it off before we get to an hour. You've all spent some valuable time watching this live stream. Thank you very much. Tune in for the next live stream 1 week from today, same time, 8 p.m. Los Angeles time. That'll be June 12th, and I will be talking about my worst hotel experiences ever. As you can tell, I've stayed in a lot of hotels, and so I'll be sharing with you my top 10 worst hotel experiences. So, take a look for it, and good night, Joshua. Good night, Brandon. Good night. Clement says it's only 12 noon, but hey, it's night where I am. So, good night to you, CL. Good night, Clement. Good night. SoCal Seth, thanks. I'll keep up the good work. Good night to you, and out on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, stop stream.